What is going on, everybody? It is Dylan with Astrodfs bringing you a brand new video. Today's video going over Week 18's two-game Saturday slate. So we have a really good ending game and a very interesting early game, I guess. It's still an afternoon game, but we got some information of a few starters out for Baltimore. We don't know what their starters are going to look like as far as which guys are going to sit, which guys are going to play, etc. But the other three teams, we kind of pretty much know we got with a few injuries there. So Lamar is already ruled out. That's good for this slate. Tomorrow's slate is going to be something completely different. But Lamar's out, so Huntley is getting the start. So we got Stroud, Minshew, Huntley, and then Mason Rudolph is getting the start as well. So right off the bat, we have a 47.5 versus 34.5 total between Stroud, Minshew, and then Huntley and Rudolph. So 13 points separating how Vegas sees these games ending up. Stroud against Indy had a really good game. We can go back and look early in the season. Stroud, I mean, they only put up 20 points, but 384 yards and 2 touchdowns get you 25 fantasy points. Look at Gardner Minshew. This is a game, I believe he came in relief for Anthony Richardson. 19 of 23, 171 and a touchdown, 11.1. You look at Minshew's numbers all season. Only a couple games getting above 20 DK points. So if I'm tackling the game, it's that one. I think there's upside with Huntley. I don't think it's the greatest, but I think it could be there. We've seen him have some pretty impressive games a couple years ago when Lamar went down. But if I'm going after a value, right, I think Mason Rudolph is that guy at 5,400. You've seen what he's done the last 2 weeks. 20 against Cincy. Last week against Seattle, they just ran the ball really well. Still, 274 and 290 against Seattle and Cincy team. This is a Baltimore defense, really good, right? But I am paying attention to the starting news and seeing what guys are going to be in and out for Baltimore, because Pittsburgh has to win this game in order to have a shot at the playoffs. So I'm looking at Mason Rudolph. Huntley is kind of the odd man out, and honestly, I'm looking at Minshew as the other guy. So I'm either paying up for Stroud or paying down for Mason Rudolph. I think if Rudolph comes out slow, they could go back to Pickett, right? But, I mean, you look at the numbers. 63 and 75. Throws over 250 in both games. No interceptions. No fumbles. And they win both games. So, I like Mason Rudolph's shot here. So, CJ Stroud and Mason Rudolph. Running backs, Jonathan Taylor, the most expensive by far. 1,300 is the difference between him and Gus Edwards. And yet again, I'll continue to mention throughout the video the whole Baltimore, and we're going to have to watch that situation. But Jonathan Taylor against Houston, I would look at Jonathan Taylor as being a guy that you get in your lineup. Didn't get to see him with his suspension-ish type IR thing. They kind of did to start him. So we didn't get to see him against Houston. But, I mean, with Zach Moss possibly being back in, I still think Jonathan Taylor's the guy to go to. And, I mean, his fantasy points are there, right? Getting pretty much over 10 since that first game back when Zach Moss had a crazy good game. But at the same time, only a couple games over 20 DK points, too. But a game like this, I think, you know, Indy is going to play it smart when it comes to Houston. They know what Houston's capable of. I think Jonathan Taylor's going to be included a lot, whether it be in the run game or pass game. So I really like him there. Baltimore, we're going to watch and see what they go with. Realistically, with them signing Dalvin Cook, I would expect Gus Edwards to not play. And if he does play in a minimal role, that is just my expectations, my thought process behind it, right? Justice Hill is, you know, not nearly as good of especially a goal line back as Gus Edwards, but you look at his numbers on the season, 4.6 yards per rush, 25 out of 29 of his targets. Like, they're not bad. They're honestly not bad with Justice Hill And then you go down at 4,800, Melvin Gordon there, finds the end zone last week. You look at what Melvin Gordon's been able to produce. Only 3.3, but I mean, it's not like they absolutely need Gus Edwards, right? They have the first seed locked. You don't want Gus Edwards, who has been one of the best goal line backs this season. Like, Raheem Mostert's there too, but as far as goal line backs, like, Gus Edwards has been really good, averaging 4.1 yards per carry, right? So I would expect they save him. That doesn't mean necessarily they will, but that's my expectations. Devin Singletary is another guy I think is in play against Indy. You go back and look at week 2 when kind of Dameon Pierce was still the guy, but you look pretty much lately and it's Devin Singletary. We can go and look at Dameon Pierce down here, 4,700, 8 for 16. Like, on the year, 2.9 yards per carry, nothing really in the receiving game at all, and only 2 touchdowns. So it's Devin Singletary against a Indy defense that gives up a lot of fantasy points to running back. So Devin Singletary is an option there. But then it also comes to the Pittsburgh running backs like always. So I continue to say you could flip a coin and pick them. Najee Harris, 2 touchdowns, 27 carries for 122 yards. Nothing in the receiving game, though. And then we look at Jaylen Warren, 13 for 75, but 4 for 23. Also finds the end zone. 19.8 compared to 27. You flip a coin. You honestly do. Obviously, it still seems like no matter what, Najee is going to get carries. I mentioned Baltimore's rush defense is really good. Their defense is really good. If they have a lot of starters out, though, you're getting 1s against 2s, basically. So that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on, come around 2 o'clock when the inactives happen and when we hear of what Harbaugh's going to do with the starters. So definitely keep your eyes glued if you're trying to target that Pittsburgh-Baltimore game. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of ownership in the Houston-Indy just because of the higher total by a wide margin. But I feel like you could get some leverage there. So I like Jonathan Taylor. I like Devin Singletary. You could flip a coin on a Pittsburgh running back like always. But I'm looking at Justice Hill as an option. Melvin Gordon as an option as well. But Justice Hill, kind of the guy that I'm looking at 5,300. So Justice Hill, Devin Singletary, JT. And if I had to pick a Pittsburgh running back in this one, it's going to be Jaylen Warren. So then we go to wide receivers. Nico Collins, 7,600. Noah Brown already out. And it looks like Robert Woods could be out as well, so that's something to keep an eye on. But you go and look at Nico Collins week 2 against Indy, and that's with Tank Dell there before Tank Dell kind of blew up. 7 for 146 and a touchdown, 30 DK points. So look recently too, he's been the top guy there. 7 touchdowns on the season, hits well over 1,000 yards, which I don't think anyone really thought that Nico Collins or any Houston wide receiver was going to hit that mark, but something to keep an eye on. And the other thing kind of looking at, and I don't think it really means much in the grand scheme of it, but you look at the teams that played on the road, and you look at his points, 7.1 on the road compared to 22.5. That's a crazy number. That's something to keep an eye on as well. Nico Collins, I expect to be very highly owned, as well as the next guy, Michael Pittman, who's just $100 cheaper. And if you had to pick one, I'm going to pick Michael Pittman in this matchup, right? We've seen what C.J. Stroud and that offense are capable of doing, of just pushing and pushing and pushing the ball down the field. Obviously, week 2, Colts get it done. Michael Pittman, 12 targets, 8 for 56, no touchdowns. He's not been really a touchdown-dependent guy. That's pretty much been the run game. So Michael Pittman's an option there as well. It's just $100 cheaper. But, Nico Collins, if Robert Woods is out, then, you're getting Nico Collins, John Mechie, Xavier Hutchinson, who, I just don't like it. I think it's going to be Mechie and Nico Collins in this one. If Robert Woods is in, I think he's great value there. So, Going to the Baltimore side, so we know that Odell's out. It seems like Zay Flowers is going to be out. He's kind of hurt, but if it was a regular game, I would expect Zay Flowers to be good to go. But since they have, continue to say the first round spot locked, there's no reason to play him here. Just get him healthy and wait. Gonna watch, see if Bateman's in. I imagine Bateman's gonna be in. He hasn't been a stud for him this season. This could be a really good opportunity to see what he's capable of. Has not hit 10 DK points on the season. At 3,600, he is going to be the lead receiver for a team that's probably not going to pass the ball a lot. But if they are trying to be, put a stamp on this season and get that 14th win, look at Rashard Bateman. Nelson Aguilar going to be there. Another name to watch is Tylan Wallace. Laquan Treadwheel is there at 3K. I would imagine these are the 4 wide receivers you get on the Baltimore side. So Nelson Aguilar, Bateman, Wallace, if he's good to go, going to be there. Treadwheel is going to be active, so he'll be there too. Don't know what he's going to see snap-wise, so that's for the Baltimore. Pittsburgh's pretty standard of who we have. George Pickens, Deontay Johnson. George Pickens, just continues to be on a really good burner right now. 7 for 131, 4 for 195, and 2 tutties. So really stepping up when it needed to, and that's with Mason Rudolph as a quarterback. You go and look at Deontay Johnson, 4 for 76, no touchdown, but still get you some solid points at 11.6. Allen Robinson, I 4 for 36, but I'm looking at someone like Calvin Austin III, as a guy rushing upside, touchdown, and that's just at the min, right? I'm not looking at that, but that's an option to keep in mind. But if I'm paying down, there's, in my opinion, better options with the Baltimore wide receivers. You go to the Houston wide receivers of Hutchinson and Mechie, and then Indy is pretty straightforward. Pittman, Downs, Pierce, right? We're looking at Pittman. Downs is an option as well. I don't think, you go to week 2, 7.7. I don't think Downs has progressed as much as people thought he would, and it's not in a negative progression. I think it's still positive. It's just they haven't needed to rely upon him with Jonathan Taylor coming back. And then Alec Pierce just being a huge GPP play. You look at week 13, 22 points, and then really doesn't do anything. And then last week against Vegas, a 58-yard touchdown for him. So I'm not looking at Alec Pierce, though, in this matchup. If I'm getting anybody on Indy, it's Pittman. So we're looking at Nico Collins, Michael Pittman, George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, and then looking down at some values with Bateman, Aguilar, Wallace, Treadwheel, Calvin Austin. And then comes interesting tight end where you get, yet again, something we're going to have to keep an eye on. If Isaiah Likely's in, I love Isaiah Likely in this matchup. Not over-the-top love, but you're getting Isaiah Likely, Dalton Schultz, and then Freiermuth as guys to target. You look at Kylan Granson. He's not somebody that stands out fantasy-wise just because of how included Indy is with their tight ends. You look at Mallory on the season, 25 targets. You look at Granson, 49. You go to Mo Alley Cox, 18. It's not something that stands out. When Ogletree was there, 21. So they don't have a standout tight end. Obviously, I think it's good for tournaments because they're going to be low owned, and the upside is there against a Houston team that's allowed a decent amount of points to tight ends. If you go look at some numbers, but I'm pretty much targeting Likely, Schultz, Freiermuth. Watching to see what Likely, if he's playing, then yes. But Charlie Kohler, the guy drafted with Isaiah Likely, I believe, if I remember, is another guy to look at 2,500, the stone min, and just kind of allows you to pay up at other positions. Defense, Pittsburgh is probably the defense I'm getting at 3,100. Week 5 when they played Baltimore and beat Baltimore with Lamar, 18 points. It's a must-win game for Pittsburgh. And just Texans Colt is pretty much, if you win, you're almost in. It's going to be very interesting to see how the playoff format kind of pans out. But if the Colts win, I think they have a better edge over the Texans. If the Texans win, overall, it's going to be hectic. It's going to be wild. But Pittsburgh in a must win, and then Texans, Colts in must wins. But in a low total against backups, I'm going to target Pittsburgh's defense. So that is it for this video. If you guys are interested in the main slate, I will have that video going out tomorrow when we start to learn more and more of who's playing, who's not, type scenarios. So hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next one.